works. Good evening, I'm Bobby King. I'm the operations manager for the Community Services Department. And we are bringing you a presentation tonight about a Votran Transit Development Plan that we've been working on for the last 8 or 9 months. We've been working with our consultant, Tyndall Oliver, who is here tonight, and some consultants that they've been working with. Carl Weckman is here with our group tonight as well. Our general manager, Kelvin Miller, is here tonight. And we have a couple people in the audience as well. So we're going to start off by going through a pre-recorded presentation that explains what the transit development plan is and how we've gotten to the point where we're at now, where we're basically presenting the findings of public surveys that we've conducted, public workshops that we've conducted, surveys, onboard surveys, and data collection and other things. So this presentation will go through quite a bit of information, and when we're through, we'll open it up for the public to ask questions, and we can clarify anything that anybody needs us to clarify. And then at the very end, we'd like for you to take a survey. If you don't do it tonight, you can take it at any time. It'll be online, available for you to take at your leisure. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this public workshop. My name is Joel Ray, and I'm part of the project team putting together Votran's Transit Development Plan, also known as a TDP. Before I proceed with the presentation about Votran's TDP and its related recommendations for transit in Volusia County, let's go over what we will be covering today. We will be looking at what a TDP is, the steps taken to complete the Votran TDP, results from the first phase of public involvement, where we have heard a great deal about the mobility needs of the community, the process for developing the TDP recommendations, and finally, a list of short and midterm transit service recommendations. After, we will discuss what is left to finish up the TDP process. Let's first look at what a TDP is and also what it is not. A TDP is a 10-year plan that lays out a strategic vision for the future of a transit agency. It evaluates existing conditions in a community, both in terms of growth and demographics, as well as current transit services. Then, it identifies current and future needs for enhanced transit mobility, regardless of whether there is current funding for them. Finally, the TDP compiles a logical phase plan for bridging the gap between today's services and tomorrow's needs. A plan that ultimately does acknowledge the current and future fiscal realities in the community for such transit improvements, so that it includes both funded and unfunded priorities. In addition, it is especially important for transit agencies in Florida, like Votran, to complete a major update of the TDP. It is required every 5 years by the Florida Department of Transportation, and it also is a required element for these agencies to receive funding from the state. This specific source of revenue is known as block grant funding. From a local policy perspective, it also is helpful to understand that while a TDP outlines how a transit agency may desire to grow and evolve over time, it is not a binding agreement like a budget. Because of this, during interim years between the major updates, annual progress reports are prepared by agencies to show how they are doing over time with their implementation processes. If changes in local conditions necessitate changes in the vision plan, these are addressed in the annual updates as well. Now, let's talk about the journey to prepare a TDP for Votran in Volusia County and how we got where we are today. Votran followed a methodical process, as well as Florida Department of Transportation guidelines, to develop its TDP. The agency did this to ensure the process results in a better plan that will benefit you, the community it serves. As part of the process, Votran's project team developed a number of technical reports that were reviewed by an advisory committee made up of local, regional, and state participants. Additionally, a very important aspect of this process is public involvement, which was accommodated early in the process and is going on again at this time. So, we really appreciate you joining us today. At the same time that this TDP is being prepared, Votran also is conducting a comprehensive operational analysis of its fixed route bus services. which is also known as a COA. The primary goal of the COA is to enhance the efficiency of Votran's fixed route bus services so that its current resources are utilized effectively in meeting the transit needs of the community. The analysis process is designed to examine and evaluate the system to determine where improvements can be made to make transit operations more effective and efficient across the network, while still ensuring the ability of the system to serve existing riders. Ultimately, the COA is trying to ensure that Votran gets the best bang for its buck. The main purpose of completing the COA concurrently with the TDP is to enable any proposed changes to routes and the network to be included in the TDP as the quote-unquote new base network for the initial years of the plan. This base network then becomes the starting point for the TDP to determine the appropriate mobility solutions, capital improvements, and technologies needed in Volusia County over the next 10 years. Every planning process works best when it involves the members and stakeholders of the community to ensure that the process recognizes needs from their perspective. This is why public involvement efforts are so important to the TDP process. They provide an opportunity for critical input and feedback and are key to establishing the basis for identifying and understanding transit needs in a community. Effective outreach can help gather information to ascertain community perceptions and expectations about local and regional transit services, as well as collect reactions about planned improvements to those services. As mentioned before and shown here, we already have completed some of the planned outreach activities for Votran's TDP, including interviews with key stakeholders and discussion groups. We also have completed some public workshops and surveys, and I'll show you some of those results momentarily. All the activities shown here were conducted as part of the first phase of public outreach for the TDP effort. Through the first phase of public involvement, we have had nearly 3,500 people participate and give us input. Of the 3,484 total participants involved in the first phase of public input, 24 stakeholders were engaged via interviews, 45 Votran staff and bus operators were involved through meetings and interviews, 1,696 bus riders and non-riders participated in the onboard survey and/or online general public survey. 44 selected participants provided input during the facilitation of 4 discussion group workshops. 150 people were involved through grassroots outreach. 31 people participated in the first phase of public workshops, and 1,494 were engaged through the use of email, web, and social media outlets. Currently, we are holding 2 additional public workshops, one of which you are participating in right now. In addition, we also have started another online survey and will provide you with information on it later on. I'm now going to share a brief overview of some of the outreach results we have compiled thus far from the many activities that have been completed. For example, we completed a bus onboard survey of all Votran routes in January of 2021. To help us understand more about current Votran riders, their travel behavior, and their needs. Here, we show some general characteristics of riders that took the onboard survey. As you can see, most riders, 54%, are over the age of 45. Approximately 48% of riders identify themselves as being Black and/or Hispanic. Over half, 51%, have an annual household income of $20,000 or less. The majority, 59%, use Votran services 5 to 7 days per week. This high frequency of use shows that Votran is an integral part of the community and that current riders depend on it. The bus onboard survey also asks riders to select the top 3 improvements that they would like to see Votran implement to improve their experience. This is an important question for rider survey since current riders are most familiar with the system and therefore are in an excellent position to offer input on what elements they feel need to improve the most. As shown, more weekend service was the most popular choice and was selected by approximately 53.2% of respondents. The second most needed improvement was more early and/or later service, with approximately 52.7% expressing this need for existing routes. More frequent service on existing routes was the third most popular choice and was selected by 41.6% of respondents. Please note that since respondents were able to select multiple responses, the distributions for all of the selected improvements total more than 100%. Besides the onboard survey of riders, the project team also conducted a general public survey from November 2020 to March 2021 to help better understand what Volusia County residents would like to see for enhancing transit services. Primarily in response to the pandemic situation, this other survey was offered only online. It also included a wide range of questions so that both current riders and non-riders could respond and offer input. In the survey, a similar question about needed transit improvements was included. When asked about their top priorities for the next 10 years, more frequent bus service was the most important improvement that respondents would like to see Votran focus on. The next most indicated priority was more weekend service, followed by more early and later service. It is interesting to note that the same priorities were consistent between the general public and current riders. This suggests that expanding service hours and adding frequency may not only improve the quality of service for current riders, but it also may help attract more potential riders to Votran bus service. Throughout all of the various outreach activities completed to date, several improvement priorities rose to the top. This table shows a snapshot of these improvement priorities with how they were ranked within each public input activity. Based on all the activities completed so far for the TDP effort, increased frequency was considered the top priority in all forums for Volusia County riders and non-riders for the next 10 years. More weekend service was mostly the second priority, signifying a need for more service supply on Saturdays and Sundays. Express and regional services were mostly the third priority, indicating a need to connect quickly with key points within and outside of the county. And extended span of service, that is, either earlier or later service, was generally considered the fourth most important improvement need going forward, again indicating a need for more service supply. With the direction from the community, as we just showed in the outreach results, and various data and demand analysis efforts, Votran has identified a number of service and capital needs to serve its community in the next 10 years. But first, let's take a look at the two-phased analysis process that was used to guide the development of the potential improvements that Votran may implement. As previously mentioned, a COA is an analysis of an existing transit network that is used as a tool to improve operations in the short term. This short-term analysis also utilized input from riders, staff, and stakeholders, as shown in the previous slides. However, the process is primarily data-driven, so it focused on using route-level characteristics such as on-time performance, peak passenger load levels, operating costs, and bus stop level passenger boarding data. The midterm analysis then builds on that base network and develops a more robust vision to improve Votran beyond just the COA efficiency improvements in the next few years. To help support this process, significant analysis was done to understand the local operating environment, including examination of current and future population and employment densities, and assessment of the propensity for use of transit by various demographic segments, such as low-income and older adult populations. We then used the combination of analytical results and public engagement input to identify key mobility needs and develop logical alternatives to meet them. The result of the whole process is a TDP midterm network that builds off the initial COA network while also incorporating improvements such as the enhancements of routes with the highest ridership and forward-thinking technology-based options that will make Votran a viable transit option for all in the future. This slide briefly summarizes the key objectives of the Votran TDP's two-phased approach. The short-term period, which encompasses the first 3 years of the plan, focuses on service efficiency and connections and is based on recommendations derived from the COA. Typically, COA improvements would cover a 1 to 2 year period at most, but due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the funding and/or lifestyle uncertainties that may result from it, the timeline for short-term implementation was adjusted to 1 to 3 years. This adjustment allows Votran additional time to implement any of the related recommendations if there are any funding delays associated with these projects, or the quote-unquote new normal ends up warranting more preparation time prior to implementation. Then, in the midterm period, which involves years 4 through 10 of the plan, the focus will be on building onto the short-term network in a logical fashion to further enhance Votran services so that over the next decade, it will become an enhanced, connected, technology-based system that is able to meet the needs of current riders while also attracting new discretionary users from throughout the county. I'm going to now have Carl Weckenman from our project team walk you through the TDP's proposed short-term needs resulting from the COA work.
Thank you, Joel. As part of the Comprehensive Operational Analysis, or COA part of this project, we have been asked to evaluate the entire Votran bus network and make recommendations designed to improve mobility for customers, while also reducing costs where possible. We looked at each route, segment by segment and trip by trip, as part of this analysis. While we do recommend changes on most routes, it is important to note there are many positive aspects of the current service, which we attempt to preserve. The reliability of the service in terms of on-time performance is outstanding. In the 6 months of data we reviewed, nearly 90% of trips were made on time. The schedules themselves follow regular intervals, making it much simpler to remember when the next bus is coming. Connections between routes have regular pulses, which reduces transfer time for customers who must make a connection. Finally, the service levels on the routes generally match service demand, so the number of modifications to route frequencies with our proposal is smaller than usual for these types of projects. The changes we do recommend are several. Some existing routes have been realigned. Currently, they may follow more circuitous paths, which means longer trip times for customers and also increases costs. Our recommendations remove many of the service deviations that make these routes indirect, and in some cases, we have moved a location from one route to another to achieve the same result. Our proposal does call for the removal of service from some areas where ridership is lowest. Finally, we would recommend additional service reach on evenings and Sundays, both periods when Votran service performs well. The proposal calls for 10 routes with longer hours during the week and 5 routes which currently do not run on Sunday to begin doing so. It's important to note that many of the workers who depend on Votran are in industries where work shifts frequently fall outside traditional work hours. Finally, for areas where bus service has been less successful, the long-term plan identifies mobility on-demand areas to expand more flexible services in areas where most appropriate. Some of the important changes in East Volusia County are the realignment of several routes, such as routes 105 and Route 119, to serve as crosstown routes, routes that would no longer serve the transfer plaza. There's improved service frequency to every 30 minutes in the proposal along Granada Boulevard. The proposal does not recommend maintaining service on some lesser used street segments, such as Hand Road and areas north of Granada Boulevard within Ormond Beach. The proposal recommends combining routes 1 and 18, as well as routes 12 and 15 to improve costs. Within the southeast part of Volusia County, the plan proposes improved frequency of service to every 30 minutes along Dunlawton Avenue and expanding nights and Sunday service farther west to Interstate 95 in the Port Orange area. Routes have been reconfigured near Swallowtail Transit Hub to improve service directness. Finally, existing fixed routes along current Route 44 and the service along Route 17 to Ponce Inlet are proposed to be discontinued due to lower ridership. Flex zones in New Smyrna Beach are proposed to be modified to allow for this service to stretch to the New Smyrna Beach Walmart. For Western Volusia County, our proposed network attempts to better integrate Sunrail feeder service into the rest of the network to reduce service overlaps. The current Route 33, or proposed Route 133, is recommended to operate midday service within DeBary, Orange City, and Deltona. Former loop routes 21, 22, and 23 are proposed to be altered to two-way service along routes 122 and Route 133. The service frequency along current Route 20 is recommended to be reduced to once per hour, given the current ridership levels. Finally, Route 160 is proposed to be extended farther into DeLand to the DeLand Intermodal Transit Facility. In summary, the proposal would leave most daytime route frequencies the same, focusing most improvements on night and Sunday service. The net annual operating cost of the changes within the proposal are estimated to save about $470,000 on fixed route costs and a similar amount among ADA paratransit costs. Thank you for your attention, and I will now turn the presentation back to Joel for additional details on the Transit Development Plan update.
Thank you so much, Carl. So let's now look at the 4 to 10-year plan, which we call the midterm network, and again, builds on the new short-term network. Before introducing the individual alternative improvements, let me first present how the needs for the two distinct areas of the county were derived. On the east side of Volusia County, the midterm focused on more north-south services, faster connection to the west, quick downtown to beach links, commuter express on I-4, connection to Flagler County, and more service in Ormond Beach. On the west side of the county, there is a focus on more service in DeLand, faster connections to East Volusia, a more efficient hybrid service model in Deltona, and connections to the planned DeLand Sunrail station. In the next few slides, we will look at more specific details about the alternative improvements that could modify and enhance the current network in each area. Let's first start on the east side of the county and review the individual midterm alternative improvements that could enhance Votran services in East Volusia. Increasing frequency on routes 103 and 104 would increase the service frequency primarily on US 1. These will quickly connect residents and visitors to economic opportunities, shopping, and other activities, acting as a north-south horizontal elevator on the corridor. They will also connect with other Votran routes at the downtown transfer plaza, extending its reach. The East-West Rapid, an enhanced version of the current Route 60 on US 92, would provide a high-frequency connection from DeLand to Daytona Beach. This higher frequency would be combined with technology upgrades such as transit signal priority and queue jumps to help buses meet their schedules on the busy US 92 corridor. We will discuss these technologies in more detail later. The downtown to beach connector would provide a quick connection from the Volusia Transfer Plaza to the Beachside Intermodal Transit Facility. The Daytona-Deltona Commuter Express would run on I-4 just during peak hours to provide another east-west connection for the county. The Volusia-Flagler Express would also be peak hour only service and provide a regional connection to the Palm Coast area. The I-95 West to Beach connector would offer a new connection from west of I-95 to the Beachside Intermodal Transit Facility, with a stop at the Tanger outlets. The Ormond Beach Circulator would offer a local city connection from the mainland across the Halifax River to the beach. Finally, the Ponce Inlet Mobility on Demand service would provide point-to-point coverage in the Ponce Inlet area and could connect riders to a bus stop in Port Orange to reach the wider network. If there is enough demand to justify a traditional type service again in this area later in the next 10 years, A connector service could replace the Mobility on Demand service to link Ponce Inlet to the mainland in Port Orange. The midterm alternative improvements for West Volusia are designed to improve service and coverage in both Deltona and DeLand. Key improvements consist of a circulator in DeLand that would serve more areas in the downtown and surrounding neighborhoods in the north part of the city and connect the city to the proposed DeLand Sunrail station. An app-based on-demand transit service for the south side of the city, which would offer point-to-point coverage to areas between New York Avenue and Taylor Road. A traditional on-demand hybrid service model also has been considered in Deltona in the midterm. In addition to continuing the realigned fixed route services as presented in the short-term plan, there also would be 3 new Mobility on Demand zones introduced. As this area's density and scale may not warrant additional fixed route services, even in the next 4 to 10 years, on-demand microtransit type services would provide an efficient option to keep the community connected to Votran in that area. With planned commercial growth in Orange City, a connector has been considered to serve this area. Lastly, a regional commuter service to Orlando also is a possible alternative enhancement. The Volusia Lynx Commuter Express would link commuters to the Lynx Central Station in Orlando, where they could connect to the Lynx bus network. However, this service is only for peak hours and can only happen with regional coordination and consensus, and as a service that complements Sunrail. Here are the details for the additional services noted throughout the midterm network maps. They would provide quick connections throughout Volusia County and the region. Enhancing routes 103 and 104 would improve service frequency on US 1 to every 15 minutes, down from 30 minutes. The East-West Rapid would replace Route 60, increasing frequency from 30 minutes to every 15 minutes. The Daytona Beach Connector would run every 15 minutes. The North DeLand Circulator, Orange City Connector, I-95 West to Beach Connector, Ponce Inlet to Port Orange Connector, and Ormond Beach Circulator would serve their respective areas every 60 minutes. The Daytona to Deltona Commuter Express would add another connection from the east to the west part of the county during peak morning and afternoon hours. The Volusia Flagler Express would also operate during peak morning and afternoon hours to connect to and from Flagler County. And finally, the Volusia Lynx Commuter Express would connect Volusia County and Orlando during peak commuting hours in the morning and afternoon. Let's now look at the possible 2031 network that could result from implementation of the alternative improvements we've discussed in a different way, by frequency. This map shows the potential 2031 Votran network by frequency if all of the improvements to meet needs are implemented in the next 10 years. As shown, the 2031 network would provide frequent connections on US 1 and US 92, acting as a sort of express elevator along those corridors while also providing quick connection to the proposed DeLand Sunrail station. Implementing technology-based mobility on demand zones in lower density areas also would help expand local connections. Mobility on demand, also known as MOD services, is a technology-based on-request service that uses a phone app or call-in service for scheduling trips. The service connects point-to-point within a defined service zone and typically is provided with non-bus-like vehicles or vans. In the West, South DeLand and 3 key areas in Deltona would implement this type of service. Though some parts of these areas would lose fixed route bus service with the COA updated short-term network, MOD would fill in most of these gaps. In the East, the 2 existing flex zones in New Smyrna Beach would be converted to MOD zones. Additionally, Ponce Inlet also is identified as an area that has demand for MOD services initially. This service would complement Votran's fixed route bus services. With MOD, connections could be made to any destination within the zone or to nearby Votran bus stops for connecting to routes that travel beyond the zone. To support the implementation of many of the alternative improvements discussed for transit services in Volusia County, there also should be a corresponding investment in capital infrastructure. To this end, 2 new park and rides, one in the east and one in the west, are proposed to support local and regional connections. Improving bus stop infrastructure and accessibility is needed to ensure that riders can get access to and use Votran facilities safely and conveniently. Replacing retired diesel vehicles with electric vehicles is another improvement Votran should consider in the next 10 years. This potential change in vehicle propulsion may assist with fuel costs and can also attract discretionary riders that are environmentally conscious. Implementing autonomous vehicles also is a potential concept to consider in the future, especially for the downtown to beach connection, as this also may help improve the attractiveness of transit and convince discretionary riders to use it. We mentioned transit signal priority previously. This application utilizes vehicle location and wireless communication technologies to extend the green phase or shorten the red phase of a traffic signal to allow buses to reduce their delay at intersections. This can help reduce overall travel times and ensure on-time arrivals, especially if the route is on a congested road with many busy intersections. When combined with transit signal priority, queue jump lanes at intersections, which are usually implemented with right turn lanes, provide buses a head start over other queued vehicles, letting buses merge into the regular travel lanes immediately beyond the signal. These two new services would support the potential east-west rapid service on US 92 to make that connection fast and efficient. To help keep on-time performance high and improve the experience for existing riders, enhanced fare payment technologies also should be considered for implementation. This would expand options for fare payment and may also help facilitate fare compatibility with regional partners such as Lynx and Sunrail. As for the next steps of this TDP, our primary goal is to get your feedback so we can better understand your preferences regarding the various alternative improvements we've discussed today. I will tell you on the next slide how you can do that. Then we will finalize and prioritize these alternative strategies using your input to the 10-year needs evaluation. Looking at the future fiscal outlook for transit in the community, we next will prepare a TDP implementation plan with final recommendations from the list of strategies, a plan that will be financially feasible. We also will identify a list of projects for which there may not be any funding identified at this time. This list will be important in helping Volusia County and the Florida Department of Transportation, just in case some federal, state, or even local funds becomes available in the future, so they will know how best to spend that. Finally, the current project schedule calls for the TDP to be adopted in the July-August timeframe so that the final TDP will be ready for submittal to the Florida Department of Transportation by September 1st. So, how can you help to make transit a better and more practical option for commuting and getting around Volusia County? Well, please take the online survey. The link to the survey is listed on this slide and is available on the Votran website as well. You also may access it by scanning the QR code included on the slide. If you have additional input or comments, please feel free to provide those to us by using the comment box at the end of the survey. Finally, if you need any additional information, please email the Volusia County Project Manager, Bobby King. Her email is shown on this slide as well. We sincerely appreciate you taking time to view this presentation about the TDP and helping Votran plan for the future. We thank you.
Okay, so that's the end of the pre-recorded presentation. Sorry for those of you that came in a little bit late and maybe missed the first part of it. We are working on trying to get it on our website in an ADA format so that anybody can see it. So hopefully we'll have that done in the next couple of days. Or you can email me and I'll certainly send you a copy. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things. The presentation is, just want to remind everybody, this is a presentation that encompasses a 10-year plan. So if you remember during the presentation, we went through short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals for the TDP. And so there's a lot of information that's brought to you today. We're focusing, of course, on the short-term needs but making sure that we capture what we need to do in the future. That's what the whole idea is behind a 10-year transit development plan, is knowing where we're going. So the other thing I wanted to point out was when we were talking about the routes, we have made changes, or we have seen changes to the routes presented to us by our consultant. And in order for us to kind of keep track of those, they basically added a 100 to the current route number. So if it's route 1, the proposed new route would be considered Route 101. So I just wanted to kind of remind everybody that that's what you were seeing when we were talking about the routes that were numbered in the hundreds. They're the changes. So now I'm going to open it up to the folks in the audience to ask questions to any of the Votran folks, myself, or the consultant. And then, and if you just are adding comments for the record, that's perfectly fine too. We want to know what you have to say. The people online, as soon as we're done with the people in the room, we'll ask you to do the same thing. So let's get started. I know this young lady's been here for quite some time, and I'd love for her to come on down and ask the questions that she'd like to ask. Sorry, just pull it down towards you.
Okay.
There you go.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to Votran for supplying us with face masks. That was a good thing. And the reason I came tonight was I was being given the impression that they're considering changes to routes 23, 21, and 22, like cutting 21 or 22 completely out and cutting DeBerry off of the 23 route, which would totally mess my day up. So I was wondering if this is something that they're even looking into, or if what I heard here that they're just expanding the 33 into that, is that what's happening and I'm getting the wrong information?
So we'll let the individual that came up with the new structure for routes, Carl, address that for you.
So the answer to your question is that the routes in the Deltona, Orange City, and DeBerry area have been significantly restructured. We had really two goals in restructuring them. One was to convert routes that operate in loops right now into two-way service. And so there are two routes, one that follows the 33's path currently, all the way from the DeBerry Sunrail Station to Howland Boulevard. And then a second route that operates farther south along parts of the current routes 21 and 22. So there are a few parts of the current routes 21, 22, and 23 where our recommendation is to discontinue the service. But for the most part, the same locations are covered. They're just covered using different buses, bus routes, is what I should say. One enhancement is that service. Our recommendation is that there be midday service to the Sunrail station because there are
needed.
midday trains, which there currently is. You have once the 30 series stops running in the midday currently, there's no you'd have to walk basically from DeBerry City Hall down to.
Right.
So that is one recommendation we've made. The COA is our opinion. It's a recommendation that we provide to the county and Votran. You know, what they accept and what they move forward with implementing becomes obviously their prerogative.
Okay. So then, if I'm understanding this right, the 21, 22, is it going to be still running, have that every hour going down Enterprise? Because that's my concern. I got 4 doctors through there and they don't let people sit in the offices anymore and wait. So if I can't get a bus back when I need one, you know, if I got to wait like 2 hours, if I just miss it and have to wait 2 hours, I got a 45-minute walk back up to Marketplace.
Well, unfortunately, our recommendation is, our hope was to move everything that was currently every 2 hours to, at worst, once an hour. But for reasons of staying within the budgets, the route that operates farther south, which is the one that operates along Enterprise Drive, was is recommended as every 2 hours. So, you know, I would encourage you to make the comment that you just made, because, you know, that's the feedback that we obviously need in terms of, you know, how does this impact riders?
Yeah, because there's quite a few through there that actually use that to get, that's just a highway full of doctor's offices.
Sure. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
and that's just my questions.
I just want to, this is probably a good time to mention that the recommendations come to our county council at some point later this summer, and they will be really the ones that help us decide what we can and can't do.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see if you wouldn't mind talking to the Votran folks back there to see if there's other services that we provide that could be helpful to you in a different service format, with paratransit or something along those lines that may be of benefit to you. Just, would you guys mind just seeing what she usually does? Okay. So don't leave yet. Okay. Thank you for your input.
Kudos to all of our drivers on the west. They're the best.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got a couple other people in the audience. Anybody want to come up? Don't be shy.
Yes, I'm a 40-year rider on the bus system. I'm mostly transit between the east side of Volusia County all the way into Orlando or into Seminole County. And over the years, the buses have witnessed or caused crashes over the years and other issues of the matter of complaint. But that's not my most of my main complaint. The question is since they have the cameras on the buses and they record the road and they're there before the police or before the investigation starts, they have the recording for the cameras, and we just found out they have the recording only for 2 weeks if they weren't notified early enough. So anything that can be where the drivers can initiate that, notice that they're a witness to a crash on the road, because one of them was involving wasn't involving the bus, but that witnessed like 2 vehicles from it that was investigated by a traffic homicide by the city of Daytona Beach. So I have a question about that or recommendation. So if you implement something for the drivers to notify the central office, so when there's a request to the central office for those particular videos, they can get easily without running through a ton of saying we don't know, it's not our route, or all that type of answers coming back from the main office. So I think that's most of my comment about the buses. You always, when you get the normal riders, you're gonna have complaints here and there, your typical riders. So I'm just a more or less long haul rider from the east and west more than your typical local. So that's my comment. Thank you.
I will say that in regards to the cameras, if there are incidents in the area, the police department in those municipalities do a pretty good job of getting in touch with us to let us know to pull those tapes.
This is also from the attorney's office. So,
Okay.
so
And
we pulled the traffic camera already, and then we found out your bus within 1 minute came across the accident and the bumper was in the road. So the bus had to go around the bumper. So there's the active one that's going on, but I'm saying is something that makes it a little easier, and maybe your retention, I don't know, just 2 weeks, or the driver makes a notification to the office that there is something there and you guys are a witness of the road and you're the first people at the accident scene before the police and all that stuff, because vehicles get moved around.
Right.
And stuff is not there as photos in the past, or the police gets there and they have no clue and the witnesses are not unreliable. So that's where the issue of the cameras come in.
yeah, I understand.
Okay,
We can look into that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else in the audience that wants to speak? I'm going to open it up to the online individuals, see if they want to ask any questions. And I already have some that have typed in some questions. So Tennille Hart wanted to know if the slides are available for printing, and yes, they are. I can either send it to you and you can print it, or I can print you out a copy and mail it to you. So whatever you want to do, Miss Hart, just let me know. And I think she has an additional question. I'm wondering if there is room in the plan for a zippity trolley for residents and tourists to hop on and off at night spots and to get a ride when bars close at 3 a.m. to not have to drive after partying. Maybe open air, fun to encourage ridership of that crowd, as I have seen in other cities with a tourist clientele. So I think that was Miss Hart, but it could have been somebody else. So that has been brought up, but I don't know that it's in the plan right at the moment. Anything's possible, but is it specifically in the plan? No, I don't think that it is. Let me get another question while I'm at it. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so maybe that was the entire question. Might have left a few. She said it would be experimental and be highly advertised and encouraged to avoid drinking and driving. I'd use fewer vehicles and carbon emissions. So that was the questions that I've gotten so far. Anybody want to ask a question online? Your voice can be heard, so please raise your hand. If you don't know how to do that, just give me a quick question or a quick chat, and I can help you through that. There's a little hand that you can select if you want to ask a question. And then we'll unmute you. So Linda Williams says, where's the hand? So it's on the right-hand side next to your name. If you hover over some of the icons, there's one that says raised hand. But okay, so we're going to unmute you, Miss Williams, and you can ask your question. You might have to unmute yourself as well. Okay, you're ready. Go ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Linda Williams, and I do a group called Common Ground, Civil Discourse Common Ground, and we've been looking at this issue of transit and transportation and ecology and all of that stuff and roads. And so is it, and I wrote the questions about, could we have a trolley that carries people around, you know, kind of a fun thing for tourists and those people that stay out late and stuff like that. What is there just not a demand for that, or just hadn't thought of it? Like I was wondering how we might get that going to get more people like who are just out having fun to use the system and use fewer cars.
I think at one point there was a trolley that actually ran down the South Atlantic.
Yeah, I remember it.
And I think it was discontinued for lack of use.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a cooperative venture from Votran and some of the businesses in that area, and it just went away. And I think went away for lack of demand.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if that might be, you know, looked at again because the times are changing as far as what people are willing to do. But as far as our roads and stuff, it might, we might demand more, you know, different types of transit. But the buses just don't get it for that, you know, that time and zipping around, you know, doing different things. But anyway, I wanted to throw that out there. And also, what are your plans for the electric? Is this like something that really might come about as far as using electric buses and stuff like that? That's pretty exciting.
We have initially looked at some doing electric vehicles. Part of the issue with electric vehicles is the cost of the electric vehicles is a lot more than what the diesel is. And also getting the electric vehicles, you have to have the infrastructure to be able to power those electric vehicles, and that's where the biggest cost is. And right now, the funding doesn't allow us to buy those type of vehicles and the infrastructure needed to run those vehicles.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
And I hope you will kind of investigate a little more about that, at least during the high season of when folks are in town, of being able to use that type of conveyance. I know it wasn't used much in the past, but times are changing. So I hope you'll look at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else online have any questions or want to speak? Okay, so if anybody online is having any difficulty, please feel free to email me any of your questions. I've been trying to respond to those and be more than happy to speak to you on the phone or however you want to reach out. Even if we end the meeting tonight and you still have questions, please reach out. We want to hear from you. And please, I encourage everybody to do the survey. Go online, do the survey, do the QR code before you leave today and do the survey, or we have a tablet in the back for you to do a survey. So I guess unless I see anybody else that has a question or wants to speak, we will end the meeting tonight. Okay, last call. All right, thanks everyone. I really appreciate you attending, listening in, and doing the survey.